Hello, fellow fantasy sports fans, and welcome to another edition of Freezey's Fever. I'm your host, Paul Freese, and I'm coming at you from thesportsfellas.com and at thesportsfellas on Twitter. So let's get started here. We're going to go into a little bit of matchups today, as well as other than the matchups, we're also going to end up going into. I'm going to talk a little bit about trading. This is the prime time of year to start trading. This is going to be the time that makes or breaks your playoffs for your season long leagues. I'm going to get into like a small segment of DFS just to give you a little teaser, and then my podcast tomorrow will be all about daily fantasy. So you might want to tune into that. Had a really good week in daily fantasy last week. Actually, won over $200 in addition to putting in the $200 and everything. So it was a good week. So I just want to continue it this week and help everyone continue. If you're listening to this podcast as well as other podcasts we do for daily fantasy, this matchup podcast is really going to help you in that as well. But overall, it's going to help you in season long leagues. So I'm going to go into talk about the game tonight as far as the Bears versus the Packers. I'm pretty sure that this won't launch by then, but I'm going to just say that I'm pretty sure Alshon Jeffrey is going to go off. Definitely keep him rolling in your leagues for the near future. I'm pretty sure Hoyer just hasn't found him yet, but he is getting a nice peppering of targets per game. He actually had 10 last game, just in the first half, but in the second half he wasn't used. I think Cameron Meredith just became too wide open, so that was the whole problem. But as far as other than that game, I'm hoping Rodgers can actually do well tonight. I think that all the Bears are in play, as well as all the main offensive Bears, as well as all the main offense for Green Bay. I think it's a great game. As well as Eddie Lacy is out, so don't be launching Eddie Lacy tonight. But here's the thing: is I really want to talk about the 9:30 game over in London, England, Twickenham Stadium. This is the first time a NFL game's been played in Twickenham Stadium, and it's going to be the New York Giants versus the LA Rams. I actually think it's going to be a pretty good game. Odell Beckham has been hindered this week with the hip injury. I cannot see him sitting due to the fact that he just came off a 220-yard game. 222 yards, 2 touchdowns. I believe it was 8 receptions. He is coming off that kind of game. I can't see him sitting, especially when he traveled in the offseason to England and around Europe to make sure that he got like the NFL over. He had them understand his passion for the NFL and for football. So he's not going to miss this game. I would say fire him up on all cylinders. The LA Rams are without their main cornerback. He will be covered by Troy Hill. Troy Hill is ranked pretty much near the bottom for Pro Football Focus, so I would not hesitate using Odell Beckham this week. I think Sterling Shepard is also in play. Sterling Shepard has not had that great of games lately. But any time Eli is throwing well, like he did last week, there's always going to be Eli interceptions. That's not throwing well for Eli. The whole Eli throwing well is like 3 or 4 touchdowns. And you're going to see that this game, probably to Odell and to Sterling Shepard. I think Larry Donnell is a nice sleeper, too. A nice sleeper. The LA Rams have been giving up. They played Detroit last week. You saw Anquan Bolden have over 100 yards and a touchdown in that game. That you want to know why? Because he was acting as basically their tight end that game because Eric Ebron was out. So tight ends are giving up. They're giving up a little bit to tight ends. I would continue to monitor that the situation to make sure that Larry Donnell is, playable for this week, but I believe he's going to start. I would not launch Rashad Jennings. The Giants are averaging an abysmal 53 yards per game for all their running backs and 0 touchdowns in the last 5 games. Three games. Orleans Darkwa had one. I believe it was against Minnesota. So I honestly, they're all in play. All the Giants. Josh Brown is not in play. Unfortunately, he has a domestic violence. He decided to harm his wife, and he will not be traveling to London. So the LA Rams, let's just go to the LA Rams side now. The LA Rams, I think Todd Gurley is going to have a breakout game this week. I could be mistaken, but it's coming. It's got to be coming. The problem is Gurley is just not getting enough room to run because Case Keenum hasn't been throwing the ball well enough. But last week he threw the ball well enough, and the guards were still collapsing on Gurley. It's just because Detroit at home is very good against collapsing the run, even though they're ranked 24th against the run, 24th worst for the run. The problem is at home they're a different animal. The Lions are a different animal. And the whole thing is that just continues, and they haven't given up any touchdowns this year. So Gurley didn't have a good week, and that was honestly, you could have seen that coming. But if anyone watched the games last week like I do every Sunday, Terrence West just completely went off of the Giants last week. Gurley has more talent in his middle finger and his right pointer finger than Mr. West has in his whole body. I could see him being locked for a touchdown and over 100 yards in this game. That's going to be good enough to help you with your week. I really think you should fire up Todd Gurley. I don't know what kind of other things you have a chance to do right now, but if you've been thinking about trading Todd Gurley, I think this game is going to show you that wasn't the best idea. But at the same time, if you're still thinking about it after this game, I want you to wait until after this game on Sunday to actually think about trading him, because I'm gonna tell you right now that he's gonna have a good day on Sunday, and when he has a good day, you can get some more value out of him. So, because people were like, "Oh, Todd Gurley's coming back around," you know what I mean? So I really think Gurley is gonna have some value coming up. I don't like Case Keenum in this game. I think the Giants have actually been playing some pretty good defense. Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie is back. As well as, I can't remember the other corner's name actually right now, but Jenkins is back there as well. So I really don't like I don't like Case Keenum in this game. Yeah, I know he had 30 points against Detroit last week, but that was a shootout game. I don't think this is going to be a shootout. I'm pretty sure that the Giants are going to do pretty well against the Rams. The problem is I would still start your Rams defense because Eli throws like 2 touchdowns a game or 0 touchdowns and 4 picks, or he throws 2 touchdowns and 4 picks or 2 picks. He always throws an interception in the game. I mean, I think I can count games on one hand where I've watched where Eli hasn't thrown an interception. So I think LA is a good team to fire up. They're just, like I said, they're just without their top cornerback, and without him, that's not going to be good for them. So for Odell, so fire them up, man. Fire them up. Feel confident with that. And honestly, other than Todd Gurley, I wouldn't trust Kenny Britt this week. I would just go with Todd Gurley for that game. So I'm going to move on to the main games, the 1 o'clock games. I really like, in the Saints and the Chiefs game, you're probably wondering whether to start Jamal Charles or Spencer Ware. Well, my view is this. Start both Jamal Charles and Spencer Ware. Spencer Ware had 132 yards and a touchdown last week. Jamal Charles had just under 33 yards and a touchdown last week. But he also only had 10 snaps. So with Jamal Charles being so limited, or 10 rushes. So with him being so limited, he still got a touchdown out of that. And I believe he was stuffed for one more. So he's coming back around. But the problem is, unfortunately for Jamal Charles owners, this is going to be a situation all year where you're going to see a timeshare now, I believe. I think Spencer Ware has made his mark, especially with Charles coming back last week. He doesn't want to just sit the bench. And I don't blame him. I mean, he's been carrying the workload for Jamal Charles all season with him coming back off the ACL injury. I really like both of these backs in this game. This is what's going to happen in this game. I can almost predict it. Drew Brees, the Saints are awful on the road and as a whole. Drew Brees throws an average of 2 to 3 interceptions to 1 to 2 touchdowns on the road. The Chiefs' defense at Arrowhead is one of the hardest places to play. They are a good defense this week. That's a good streamer this week, by the way. Just a little tip there. But Breeze just is not good on the road. Cooks is not good on the road. When they're in the Superdome, they're completely different players. And it's crazy to watch. But if anyone's going to score a touchdown on that side, on the Saints side this week, it's either going to be Mark Ingram on the ground because the Chiefs have a rough... They're just not that great at rushing defense. I think they're ranked, at this point, I think they're ranked 23rd against the rush. Against the pass, though, they've got Eric Berry back there. They have Marcus Peters going to be guarding Cooks. So Cooks is going to get shut down. They have Cooper on the other side, I believe. Nope, Cooper is now, scratch that. Cooper is now an Arizona Cardinal. So I'm not sure who they have on the other side. But that's where the weak spot is. So I would think Michael Thomas is a huge sleeper this week. He's been coming on. He catches 1 touchdown a week for Breeze, even on the road. I would say Thomas is locked for a touchdown. And I think Ingram gets in the end zone this week. Just doesn't have that much yardage. So that's how I really feel. But you should watch. If you're an Ingram owner, you should also be looking at John Kuhn stealing your touchdowns. I mean, it's got to be aggravating. And we've seen it before with Peyton Hillis doing that for Cleveland. So I digress there. But the whole thing is that's for the Saints side. I don't really like the Saints side in this game. Saints, like I said, they struggle on the road. The Chiefs, however, at home Andy Reid is a master at home. He's good at defense. It's like he's a Spartan and he has his back against the wall or something because they just come together collectively at home and completely just dominate teams. And how they dominate teams, they dominate them on the ground. They're going to have that 2-headed rushing attack with Spencer Ware and Jamal Charles. I'm going to say Jamal Charles gets more goal line carries. So I think he's fireable. You fire him up as well. I really like him in this game. I know Alex Smith is coming off that stinker of a game last week when he only got 10 fantasy points. People, there was a lot of weather in that game. So, yeah, Amari Cooper is just weather-proof, apparently. But Smith just wasn't throwing the ball. And then they got up 23 points to like 10 or 9. I can't remember the exact thing. But it's not a good game sampling. I would say if you have Alex Smith, start him. I don't like him that much in DFS this week, but I'll talk about that tomorrow. I like Charles. I like Ware. Kelsey is a nice little sleeper in this because Macklin's going to be covered by Macklin's going to be covered. And I wrote it in my sit-em this week. You need to check that out if you don't understand, don't know about wide receiver. But I went this week, I dived in, and I looked at the wide receiver slate, and I thought, you know what? I'm finally going to talk about the fact that wide receivers against cornerback matchups, it really, really matters. So I talked about Macklin, and if you look back at the Saints against number 1 wide receivers, even though they're ranked 28th against wide receivers, against number 1 wide receivers, they are giving up an average of less than 60 yards a game and 0.5 touchdowns. So do not start Macklin. I don't like it. Just start Charles, start Spencer Ware. I like Kelsey this game. The Saints are ranked 32nd. No, yeah, after last week against Greg Olsen, they were ranked 32nd against the tight end. deploy Travis Kelce. He's not. I can't even say he's a sleeper. Even though he did horrible last week, it doesn't matter. In this game, he can't be a sleeper. I'm going to move on. That's it for that game. I like the Chiefs D, like I said. The Saints are barely in play. So just feel confident. Fire up your Chiefs this week. The Vikings versus the Eagles is the next game. I look at this game, and it's supposed to be the Sam Bradford Eagles against the Eagles, the revenge game. He's going back into Philadelphia. He's going to be playing them hard. The problem is the Eagles' defense is actually pretty good. So I really think that if anyone's going to get anything over on someone in this game, it's going to be the Vikings' defense destroying Carson Wentz, the rookie Carson Wentz. The rookie Carson Wentz the last 2 weeks, he's actually been showing his rookiness. Let's put it that way. He's actually been showing that he's a rookie. Not that I don't like him. He scored 100. He only had 179 yards last week. I really don't think that it's going to be good in this game. He didn't throw a pick, but their safety, the Viking safety is Harrison Smith, and he's topped. He's ranked as one of the top safeties on PFF, Pro Football Focus. So I really don't like Carson Wentz in this game. And you got to look at the linebackers in this game too. As the Vikings are just a beastly D. So if you have the Vikings defense, feel confident. Go ahead, start them. The Eagles, I just don't feel comfortable starting any Eagles. That's my warning to you. Do not start any Eagles this week, unless it's maybe the Eagles defense, because the Vikings aren't going to score a whole lot. I don't feel. They don't have Adrian Peterson. They really don't have Stephon Diggs fully healthy either. So you really can't depend on that. So I'm just going to move on from that game. It's not gonna be major for you. Just start the D's. The Colts. This is a game I'm excited about. Is the Colts versus the Titans, because Andrew Luck has actually been looking okay the last couple weeks. The Titans actually gave up a touchdown and to Duke Johnson last week from Cody Kessler. I think that the Titans actually are going to give up some points here. The Titans, for a lot of people, the defense would be in play. Against Andrew Luck, I don't like it, but he does take a lot of sacks. So if you have the Titans defense and that's your only option, then go with it. If not, look for like the Chiefs, the Vikings, the Eagles. Someone's always going to have the Vikings in season long. So, if your season long league does not have the Vikings, I feel bad that let me play in your league. Let's put it that way. So the Colts have T.Y. Hilton and Andrew Luck. Well, T.Y. Hilton, if you look at his road home splits, T.Y. Hilton at home is absolutely on fire. Averages around 120 yards per game and a touchdown. On the road, he averages anywhere between 50 to 70 yards per game. I really don't think this is a good spot for T.Y. Hilton. If you have him in season long, you got to deploy him, though, because it's against the Titans defense. So their corners are okay. They're getting better, but they're not the greatest. I really think a sleeper in this game is going to be Chester Rogers. It seems like he has the eye and the ear of Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck was throwing to him more than Philip Dorsett last game. And it's going to be funny, but Dwayne Allen, who I believe is going to be hurt, Jack Doyle is going to come into play here. The Titans just gave up about 70 yards to Mr. Gary Barnidge. Cody Kessler was throwing to Gary Barnidge. I really like the spot for Jack Doyle here. And if you need a tight end streamer this week, Dwayne Allen's most likely going to be out. If he sits, Jack Doyle's a great play. As far as the Titans side of the ball, I would go with Mariota. Has been on fire. I put it in my stardom column this week. He is absolutely just the best quarterback in that AFC. I think he's better than Andrew Luck, honestly, right now, in the AFC South. He is averaging, so looking at what I wrote and everything, He had 284 yards and 3 touchdowns once again against the Browns. Had 64 yards rushing. Go to my stardom, sit 'em. Look at the stardom. You're going to see the Colts are the ranked 28th at the pass defense. They're also ranked 24th against the run. So Mariota is going to eat very well, like I said in my column. And guess what? That means DeMarco Murray is going to have a field day in this game. Here's the thing. This score is going to be close the whole time. I really feel like neither one's going to be able to stop each other. It's going to end up being a nice running game for DeMarco Murray. They just gave up 150 all-purpose yards to Lamar Miller and two touchdowns on the ground. One receiving, one on the ground. So I really, really like this spot for DeMarco Murray. DeMarco Murray is more talented than Lamar Miller. He's more of a veteran. I like DeMarco Murray more. If you feel comfortable with Mariota, you have to feel... After last week, he burnt me. I know that much in DFS. Delaney Walker. You still have to go with him in this game. The Colts are ranked 30th against the tight end. They just gave up 17.6 fantasy points to CJ Fedorowicz on Monday night. Sunday night. Sorry, Sunday night against Houston. So I like the Colts in this spot. I like the Titans' offense in the spot. I really think, and honestly, a good sleeper for you this week is not Kendall Wright, because Kendall Wright had a great game last week. But Kendall Wright was only playing 30% of the snaps. I really like Rashard Matthews in this game. I think Rashard Matthews is going to be a good sleeper for you. Mariota just spreads out the ball, though. He doesn't have a number one wide receiver like most people. So, you can just play Mariota by himself if you want to. He's a great play, great DFS play, great season-long play. He's going to have at least 3 touchdowns again, unless DeMarco Murray vultures them, which I'm hoping he does. So, just honestly. So, I'm going to move on to the Bills and the Dolphins. We just saw J.J. completely rip apart my Pittsburgh Steelers last week. 202 yards, 2 touchdowns, 204 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had the day that most running backs dream of. The problem is the Bills play a little harder than the Steelers. I wouldn't start any Dolphins this week. In my opinion, I even think Jarvis Landry's out. Unless you're completely PPRing it. I really don't like Landry that much this week. I'm off of him completely in DFS, as I'll talk about tomorrow. And Tannehill is, even though it's at home, is just deplorable. So I don't like any Dolphins. I don't like J.J. I just don't. The fact that Arian Foster's looming behind him is evidence enough for me that J.J. is not going to be the starter much longer for me. I really think Arian Foster is going to overtake him just because they don't really like his talent. I don't know why. He ran really well against my Pittsburgh Steelers, but there's something he did. I don't know. So, as I'm talking to you right now, it seems like the Bills will be without LaShawn McCoy. From what I could tell, he was out for this game. Go pick up Mike Gillislee. He had 60 yards and a touchdown last week. The Dolphins are ranked, after the Steelers last week, they're only ranked 24th against the run, which they were ranked 28th, but Le'Veon Bell didn't do a whole lot because Ben went out. But I really like this spot for Mike Gillislee. He's going to come in, be a backup. I think that Tyrod definitely is in play now without McCoy. Tyrod is going to be throwing to Mr. Charles Clay. Don't really like Charles Clay as a play in DFS, but if you have him in season-long leagues, I certainly deploy him. And a little note here, the Dolphins are averaging almost 18 points a game to number one wide receivers, fantasy points. So go ahead and feel comfortable starting Robert Woods in that spot. So I'm going to move on from that game. It was a lot better with McCoy being there. McCoy had 140 yards and 3 touchdowns last week. He actually won me a lot of money, but in DFS. But as of right now, other than Gillisley, there's not much in that game for me. The Redskins and the Lions. This may look like a great spot to honestly for the Detroit Lions to get one over on the Redskins, but Josh Norman has been training. I think Josh Norman takes that secondary aside and trains them when they're not playing, because honestly, the Redskins just are looking good against the receivers. They're not giving up a whole lot. They're giving up maybe 1 touchdown a game now. And honestly, Philly got all their points last week through defense. So the Redskins actually kind of manhandled them last week. And I think it's another spot where the Lions get manhandled again, even though the Lions are at home. Stafford was a great play last week. I think if you have Stafford in season long, you're going to have to deploy him. But like I said, the Redskins are only averaging about 1 touchdown. Their secondary, 1.5 touchdowns a game. I really like this spot for the Redskins offense against the Lions. Plus the Lions, listen to this one too. The Lions also do not have any. They don't have their secondary. Their secondary is completely decimated. First of all, other than Darius Slay, so and their offense, as far as the Lions go, they have no real running backs right now. I mean, they wish they had like Dwayne Washington and all that, but I just don't think it's a good spot for the Lions here. Maybe Golden Tate's in play in DFS. Maybe he's in play in regular. Marvin Jones is going to be completely shut down, but he's been getting shut down anyways. He had a touchdown last week, but he only had 2 catches the whole game. He has been getting shut down, and he's going to continue to be shut down by Josh Norman this week. Josh Norman just doesn't play anymore. He just completely goes in and shuts down people. So I really think this is a bad spot for the Lions offense. And their defense is going to be absolutely manhandled by Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is actually averaging over 250 yards per game since week 2. And he has, in that time, averaged between 2.5 touchdowns per game. So it's a very good spot for Mr. Kirk Cousins. I don't like Deshaun Jackson because Deshaun Jackson, as we all know, is the number 1 wide receiver. And guess what? Like I wrote my sit-em, I'm pretty sure I wrote about Deshaun Jackson in my sit-em, and that is Darius Slay's position. That's a cornerback matchup that I would not mess with. Yeah, Jordy Nelson got off for 2 touchdowns against them in week when the Packers played the Lions. I think it was week 3. However, that is Jordy Nelson, and that's when the Packers were actually playing well. So I really think that a sleeper in this game, if Jordan Reed comes back, Jordan Reed's he's the GOAT this game. I think he's going to have 2 touchdowns and over 100 yards if he plays. He's in concussion protocol right now, though. And as of right now, he is not playing. That hasn't been confirmed, is what I meant to say. And Jamison Crowder and Pierre Garçon are going to be wide open in this game. I think Jamison Crowder is going to be a huge target in this game. I think he's going to be a good target for DFS as well. He's going to have a touchdown in this game. That's if Jordan Reed doesn't play. If Jordan Reed plays, then if Jordan Reed plays, then Kirk Cousins is just going to look for him because Detroit is ranked dead last against the tight end, along with the Saints. So it's deplorable. Just target the Lions every week. The Browns-Bengals game is next. I don't like any Browns in this game. I think the Bengals, Terrell Pryor is supposed to sit. I would have liked Terrell Pryor, but honestly, if they run the ball efficiently with Isaiah Crowell, they might be able to get something going against them. But I'm pretty sure the Bengals are just going to go in, completely reverse the game script. Andy Dalton's going to throw for at least 2 touchdowns. I have a word of caution in this game, though. And I had a mess up a couple weeks ago where I started Jarvis Landry in DFS, and Joe Hayden completely shut him down. Joe Hayden is no joke. The Cleveland Browns can be a laughingstock at times. It's true. But guess what? Joe Hayden, their number one cornerback, is no joke. And you know who's going to see him the entire time? AJ Green. And Hayden is hurt right now, but he is begging to play in this game. He wants to come back just to shut down AJ Green because they want to win. The Browns actually want to win a game. They don't want to be like the Detroit Lions a few years ago and not win. So I really think that you got to look at this and kind of just temper your expectations with Green. I mean, fire him up in season long for sure. But DFS, I don't know. I'm not looking towards that this week. Hayden, like when I see these kind of cornerback matchups, I really kind of steer away from players. And I really don't like the spot for AJ Green now that Hayden's going to play. I really think if Tyler Eifert plays, he's a great play against the Cleveland Browns. He will be coming off, he'll be finally starting this season, coming off his injury last year. And I think a good sleeper in this game is Brandon LaFell. Brandon LaFell has a touchdown in every game since week 3. So just Andy Dalton's going to have to throw to somebody, and or the Browns are going to get one over on them. So I don't, like I said, for DFS, this game's pretty good for Brandon LaFell. I doubt you're going to pick him up in season-long leagues, but if you do have him, go ahead and play him. I'm going to get to the next game, which is the Raiders versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Raiders have been very, very good this year, except last week against the Chiefs. That was due to weather. I really think this is a bad spot for Amari Cooper. I hate to say it. I have him. I hate to say it. I like Amari Cooper a lot this year, but it's a terrible spot for him. Jalen Ramsey, the rookie cornerback who talks a lot of smack, but also did shut down Steve Smith, shut down, who did they play last week? I can't even remember. Chicago shut down Alshon Jeffrey last week in the whole second half. He realized he was getting, Alshon Jeffrey had 90 yards against him in the first half. Well, he wasn't letting him score that touchdown. And Cooper's going to have the yards, but he's not going to have the touchdowns in this game. I don't think so. He's only scored 1 touchdown in the whole year. I really think you got to watch Cooper this week. As well as Prince Amukamara for the Jaguars will be covering Mr. Michael Crabtree. Michael Crabtree, I don't see any upside with him this week. He's going to get yardage as well. I think the Raiders, I don't know what the Raiders are going to do in this game. I think it's going to be, it's going to have to be a running game or tight end or random wide receivers like Seth Roberts, Andre Holmes maybe. It's going to have to be because Cooper and Crabtree might catch a touchdown, but Crabtree's going to get shut down. So is Cooper. Jalen Ramsey's no joke. I respect him. I think he's a very good corner, and it's going to continue. On the Jacksonville side of the ball, the Raiders are still giving up a whopping 400 yards per game even after last week. Actually, it's down to 350 yards per game. After last week, it dropped a little bit, but 350 yards per game. This might be a good get-right spot for Blake Bortles. It is definitely a good get-right spot for Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson's completely in play this week. If you have him in season long, deploy him. DFS, deploy him. If he doesn't do it this week, he's not going to do it. He's just not going to do it. So the Ravens, I'm going to go. That's really all I like. Allen Hurns might be in play too. A nice little sleeper in the Jaguars game against the Raiders, since they are so bad at giving up yards, is Chris Ivory. Chris Ivory will be taking the goal line touches. He might actually end up having a decent game. It's just tough to say because TJ Yeldon's still there. So, and TJ Yeldon's not great, but he does vulture a lot from Chris Ivory. So I'm going to go with the next game, which is the Ravens. This is the last 1 o'clock game. Ravens versus the Jets. I would like to tell you right now that Geno Smith is the starting quarterback of the New York Jets this week, and they're just going to let him deploy. I think they're just going to let him do whatever he wants in this offense. I think it's his trial period. I think Todd Bowles is like, oh, hey, you want to actually show us that you can actually do it? This is actually going to be your week, Geno, and we're not going to take you out even if you're absolutely awful. I think he's going to throw a couple interceptions this game, but I think he's going to have a rushing touchdown and at least a scoring touchdown, passing touchdown, and it's going to go to Mr. Brandon Marshall. Especially, this is a spot, and you even saw Brandon Marshall say today that the boat has sunk for Mr. Ryan Fitzpatrick, which you hate you hate to see that for Fitzpatrick, but you got to go with that at this point. If Jimmy Smith doesn't play, the Brandon Marshall is probably my play of the week. Other than I'll talk about the other two here in a second, but honestly, Brandon Marshall is a great play in this game. If Jimmy Smith doesn't play, Jimmy Smith is a pretty good shutdown corner for the Baltimore Ravens. I really like Geno Smith's position here, and I hate to say it, but I'm going to be deploying him in DFS at least. So the Ravens, Joe Flacco has been a little hindered this week. I really think this is a good spot for the Ravens offense. Not their running attack, not Terrence West, but it's a great spot for the Jets are still ranked third against the rush, even after what David Johnson just did to them. So, and the Baltimore Ravens actually are ranked first against the rush after what the after the Arizona Cardinals did. Sorry, after what David Johnson did to the Jets, they are ranked third in the rush. The Ravens are ranked first in the rush after what Arizona did to the Jets. So the Ravens now have a get-right spot here. They just lost to the Giants. They will be without the services of Steve Smith as it stands right now. Mike Wallace is a huge play in this game. The Jets, Darrelle Revis, and I don't even know the other cornerback. They released Antonio Cromartie. So you have random practice squad cornerbacks covering Mike Wallace this week. It's a great spot for him. I think it's going to be a really good game for him, even though it's at the Jets. And I could just see that this is actually going to be a good fantasy game. So just temper your expectations with Terrence West, though. I know he had a huge week last week. But so we're going to move on to the 4 p.m. games. We're getting pretty far into our podcast here, and I'm going to hurry it up a little more. But there's some really good games here with the 4 p.m. games. I really like the slate here for DFS, and I like it for just everything. I just did a trade yesterday where I actually traded away DeAndre Hopkins, Stephon Diggs, and somebody else. Oh, C.J. Anderson. And I got Eddie Lacy back, which I know he's out. Don't fault me for that. But I got Julio Jones and Mike Evans. So I really liked what I did there because he needed a running back, the guy I traded with. I needed two good quality wide receivers. Now I have Cooper, Evans, and Julio Jones. I really like that spot. And that brings me to my next point is the Chargers-Falcons game is at 4:05. It is the Chargers going to Atlanta to the Georgia Dome. I think Julio and Matt Ryan are going to have a field day. Did anyone else see the game last week when Seattle got that pass interference, or should have got the pass interference against Julio? Richard Sherman should have got it against Julio. Well, that's going to be looming in their mind. I know Dan Quinn's fired up. I know Julio's mad. He already said he's moved on to this week. He can't wait. I think this is a spot where it's going to be a shootout game. But I think Atlanta is just going to score over 7. I'm going to call it right now. Atlanta's going to score over 650 yards this week combined. And I really feel like Julio's going to go off for another 200. And Matt Ryan's going to have a field day throwing. I love Devonta Freeman. Love Tevin Coleman in this game. Deploy all your Falcons. I don't need to even say anymore. The Chargers are absolutely awful against running backs who catch out of the backfield, and they're absolutely been terrible since Verrett. Yeah, I know. You're all going to say, yeah, Verrett went out with the ACL, but the other guy that came in, Casey Hayward is his name. And I really don't think he's a true shutdown corner. There's no way. Not Julio. He just shut down Demaryius Thomas. Trevor Siemian couldn't throw in that game, guys and girls. He could not throw. So Emmanuel Sanders got shut down too. It's not a good sampling for a game. You can't look at that. Julio is a huge play this week. Mohamed Sanu, even start Austin Hooper and Jacob Tamme. I don't care. Start all the Falcons and Matt Bryant. Just start the whole team. Just put it in your lineup and start the whole team. The Chargers are also going to be shooting out in this game, though. And I love Tyrell Williams in this game. He is 6,100 on FanDuel. This isn't my DFS broadcast, so I'll get off of that. Sorry about that. But that's how excited I am about Tyrell Williams. Travis Benjamin's been hindered the whole week. But here's the thing. If Travis Benjamin sits, Tyrell Williams then becomes, you have to look at the depth chart, but I believe he becomes the number one wide receiver. The thing is, I don't think at that point, I think Desmond Trufant won't shadow him. I think Desmond Trufant will shadow Travis Benjamin in this game if he plays. He's the number one wide receiver for that team. Tyrell Williams will be on the right side most of the time. Desmond Trufant travels, but he doesn't travel when he doesn't need to. When he's on the left, he's usually on the left side. So I think Rivers is going to have a really good game in this game because the Falcons can't stop anything. And love me some Hunter Henry this week. Antonio Gates is in play as well. He saw more snaps than Hunter Henry last week. But Hunter Henry is the tight end of the future for the Chargers. I really like Hunter Henry this week. He had his touchdown, and he had a touchdown and almost 100 yards against Denver. I think he's definitely playable. You want to look at him this week often. And like I said, this is a great fantasy game from any perspective, and you're going to have to look at it like that. Trust me. The Buccaneers 49ers is the next game. The Buccaneers have just lost Vincent Jackson, and Doug Martin is out this week. Deploy Jacquizz Rodgers with confidence. The 49ers are ranked 28th against the rush. They are ranked against the pass. They are ranked 18th. So they can be got on the pass. They can be gotten on the run. I really like Mike Evans in this game. This is a huge spot for Mike Evans. Mike Evans is the only main wide receiver for that team now. They're just going to be Jameis Winston's just going to be throwing the ball up to Mike Evans. He's going to need to. Because I think San Francisco is actually going to keep this game close. As much as I don't agree with a lot of Colin Kaepernick's views with the flag and everything, I really like Colin Kaepernick in this game as far as a rushing quarterback. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are giving up almost 60 yards per game to rushing quarterbacks on average. As far as rushing, they aren't giving up as many, though. They are only giving up an average of 35 to 50 yards per game against the running back, the main running back. But the rushing quarterbacks are giving up a lot more. Like I said, Mike Evans is huge in this spot. I think Kaepernick, you could even make a case that since Mike Davis is playing and not Carlos Hyde, that Kaepernick's going to have to he's going to have to put the team on his back this week. I really like Jacquizz Rodgers. Like I said, I like Mike Evans. Deploy your Buccaneers. Feel confident about it. Now, I'm going to go into the next game, which is the Patriots versus the Steelers. It's a painful game for me because Ben's out. Landry Jones will be playing. The Antonio Brown's in play if you're in season long. And DFS, don't do it. It's not worth it. I really don't like the spot for Le'Veon Bell either. Le'Veon Bell. I just think the Patriots. So Bill Belichick, as much as a Steeler fan as we have to despise him, I really think that he schemes. He's a genius. He's an evil genius who decides to scheme and take out one person from each team every time they play. He took out AJ Green last week. He took out the week before. I can't even remember who they played the week before. It doesn't matter, though. It does not matter because he takes out the number one player on the team. Guess what? With Landry Jones throwing to Antonio Brown and Malcolm Butler going to be able to cover him for the most part with some safety help, I really feel like that Le'Veon Bell is going to get shut down in this game. Don't deploy him at DFS. Season long, you're going to have to. He's Le'Veon Bell. You can't sit him. The Patriots, I think that Tom Brady is still angry Brady at this point. He is going to be completely... He has that narrative about him still. Cockrell is going to be covering our main cornerback. Is actually going to be covering Edelman in this game. Edelman, I'm pretty sure, can get over on Cockrell. The whole team, I feel bad for my Steelers this week because the Patriots just playing so well, and I could say, hey, Gronk's going to have a huge game in this one, and Martellus Bennett's going to end up having a huge game. Because even if we plan for Gronk, on the other side, he can throw just to Martellus Bennett. Brady can. And he can throw to Chris Hogan. Brady's never really had a number one wide receiver. Well, Edelman's a number one wide receiver, but other than Mr. Randy Moss, they really haven't had a true number one elite wide receiver. And it's sickening and mind-boggling, but at the same time, you just have to just temper your expectations. And I think James White's in play against who just gave up. I don't know if Cameron Hayward's back, and I don't know, I really don't know if Ryan Shazier is going to be back for this game. So I really think that the Patriots are going to deploy James White again, and LeGarrette Blount's probably going to run all over the Steelers. So I hate to say it, but I think this is a game that we just have to take. We just have to take and just move on to the bye. As Bill Belichick likes to say, move on to Cincinnati. We like to say move on to the bye. So I'm going to go real quick into the Sunday night game and the Monday night game. It's going to be very quickly. Running out of time here. But at the same time, I wanted to give you as much stats as possible, as much feedback as possible. And I wanted to go ahead and tell you guys and girls to make sure to go to my Twitter and follow at TSF Freezey's Fever. I want to make sure that you know to do that because I will answer any questions you have for anything. I'm already been answering them this week, and we've been gaining a pretty good following for Sports Fellas. So shout out to my Sports Fellas again. Just real quick though, the 8 p.m. game for Sunday night is Seattle versus the Cardinals. The Cardinals are at home again. Carson Palmer looked absolutely terrible last week. He had one touchdown. David Johnson's just doing everything for that offense. And I don't feel like Carson Palmer is completely healthy right now. I really think that you have to go ahead and look at this and say this is probably going to be David Johnson running. But I think Pete Carroll's going to scheme for that. So I think the Cardinals are going to have a rougher time in this game than you think. If anybody's in play, I think Richard Sherman's going to learn from his mistake last week. He's actually going to shut down Larry Fitzgerald. I think John Brown might be in play here. Obviously, David Johnson out of the backfield for catching passes. But temper your expectations for the Cardinals. As far as the Seattle Seahawks, I would not advise starting Russell Wilson against the Arizona Cardinals this week due to the fact that Arizona is giving up the 6th fewest points to quarterbacks and they're at home, and the fact that Russell Wilson has only gotten a combined 26 fantasy points in the last 2 weeks. So you've got to look at it that way. Christine Michael against the Cardinals run defense. He's going to have to do something for the Seattle to actually get something going. If anybody's in play here, Arizona's been very stingy against the tight end, but I think Graham, at this point, Jimmy Graham has proved that he's pretty much matchup proof. If you have him in season-long leagues, you have to play him. In DFS, I wouldn't do it. There's so many better options. So I'm going to move on to, it's a great game. I'm going to love to watch this game, but the fact is that the problem is that it's more of a defensive game. So the fact is, it's a matchup. It's a division matchup. They don't like each other. It's going to be that way. So there's not a whole lot of fantasy goodness in it. So I'm going to move on to the Monday slate. This is the Texans Brock Osweiler revenge game against the Broncos. Well, guess what? It's going to be the Broncos revenge game against Brock Osweiler. He left them. The Von Miller and Aqib Talib and Chris Harris said they have respect for Brock Osweiler, but they, quote, want to kill him this week. Meaning that they just want to shut him completely down. They don't like him as a player. They respect him as a person, but they don't like him as a player coming back in, saying that he's, going to be ready for them. DeAndre Hopkins is going to absolutely be shut down by Chris Harris or Aqib Talib in this game. If Will Fuller plays, he'll be shadowed by Aqib Talib. The whole Houston offense is going to struggle in this. Brock Osweiler is going to completely be under pressure the whole time. He's going to be tossing it off to Lamar Miller. That might be their only hope in this game. Lamar Miller is always deployable. Just temper your expectations. And as far as the Broncos side of the ball, with the injury to Jonathan Joseph, I think Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders are both playable in this game. Trevor Siemian had a horrible week last week. Let's just put that in the record books as just kind of toss it out to the side and say, it was an anomaly. And see how he plays this week. C.J. Anderson is fighting for his job right now. I just traded him, like I told you. But he's fighting for his job and Devontae Booker might take it from him. So just watch, temper your expectations, but I think he's playable in this game. And, that's going to about wrap it up for the whole matchups for this week. If you have any questions, like I said, at TSF REEZEYS Fever is my Twitter account now, as well as at the Sports Fellas. Pretty easy. You text them any questions about DFS or tweet them any questions about DFS. They're going to direct them right to me. So that's how that's going to work. But for season long, they'll answer them no problem. I'd like to give a shout out to my fellas for Sports Fellas and say that this is a blast and hopefully it's helping people. I like going through the matchups. Even though I do take a lot of time doing it, I might start doing them more often during the week if I have more time, so I can do this, these matchups a little less, a little less time consuming. But at this point, it's actually been pretty good. So that about wraps it up for us. Like I said, this is a prime time for trading, and just keep it going. I'm Paul Freezey for TSF Freezey's Fever, and got to catch it to become a champion. And till next time, enjoy my knowledge.